Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's seminar about orcharhino and how to automate orcharhino with Ansible. I think we can slowly start. It's now around 4 p.m. and yeah, probably the beginning is rather slow. So if there are some late arriving participants, they won't miss too much, I hope. First of all, my name is Jan Bundesmann. I have been working for ATIX for the last 5 years roughly and done a lot of customer projects all around orcharhino. Not all of them. Like roughly half of them were around orcharhino and infrastructure automation. And I was also quite busy with Kubernetes containerization stuff. And now I'm working, well, in the engineering department, and I'm also responsible for quality assurance of orcharhino. As usual, you have the possibility to ask questions. Zoom offers you this questions and answers tools. This is the easiest way to ask questions. I have it open here and I can kind of monitor what's happening there. Well, and you can, if you post a question there, then mark if it has been resolved. And I'm not sure how it looks from the participant side. If you can post something in the chat and I can read it. So I prefer if you ask questions in the Q&A tool, but if you find any other way useful, then just feel free to ask whatever you like. And also ask them while I'm talking. I will find a suitable slot when to answer the questions. At most at the end of the webinar, there will be a slot for sure for caring for your questions. Okay. So again, I'm happy to see you, and I will guide you through today's webinar. We have a quick introduction about orcharhino, and then I will show you some practical things about automating orcharhino. Yeah, so automating orcharhino basically means that we automate our automation tool, and let's quickly go through what orcharhino can automate. Yeah, it can automate. We believe that everything gets better if we automate as much as possible in our daily lives as people and the IT. Orcharhino is a tool which can, well, take some of these tasks from you. And yeah, we will also show you a quick way then how to automate orcharhino itself, because that's even better than just clicking around manually. So what does orcharhino automate? Start with the deployment. Orcharhino is a great tool for deploying hosts to different platforms. So we can help in deploying bare metal servers. We can deploy virtual machines on different hypervisors, Libvirt, VMware. Proxmox are the most prominent. We also support Ovirt, which is something we don't see that often, but we can also deploy virtual hosts in popular cloud platforms, let's say. We have different ways of deploying hosts, network-based, image-based, and there's something special, the discovery image, which is mainly intended for bare metal deployments. So for each of these platforms, you will find a suitable way. So nowadays, there's a lot of traffic going on towards cloud inits deployments. So that's something probably interesting. But of course, we prefer the classic way of network-based deployment, because this is something which is easily reproducible. After the deployment of the hosts, the task of orcharhino is not finished yet. Sorry, I have to find the questions and answers again. So then other steps can take over. like configuration management. So as soon as you have installed your host, you want to do more things with it, install software, configure users, passwords, access, whatever. Ocarina integrates several configuration management tools, namely Puppet, Ansible, and SaltStack. It can act as a front end for the server-side configuration of these configuration management tools. Typically, host configuration is like an ongoing process. The other ongoing process is the patch management. Basically, this means that Ocarina acts as a repository server for different distributions. We can provide packages for RPM-based distributions. We can provide packages for Debian-based distributions. We also provide a client software that helps to control access to repositories in a way that hosts only receive packages in a, let's say, tested version. So we can version the repositories and label them by life cycles. So a host that is intended for development purpose will only see development packages, which typically are the most recent ones, while testing hosts only see packages that are already closer to production, and you can easily control which packages production hosts eventually see. So you can establish a testing quality assurance workflow for your hosts as you can do for your software, and ideally those two workflows go hand in hand. And that's what Ocarina is made for. So you see here, these are I think the most prominent Linux distributions in the enterprise field. Yeah, this is basically another visualization of what I just told. Typically, you assign hosts to different life cycles. You can even think of having like short-lived developer instances somewhere in the cloud. Then you have a separate hypervisor for your testing on premises, and another, well, in this example, it's a vCloud, so the cloud version of the VMware for the production machines. This is like a workflow that you can easily manage with Ocarina. Yeah. And then that's how basically the life cycle of a host as viewed by Ocarina is closed. So you provision hosts, you manage hosts, and you manage the content. And eventually you can also decommission your hosts or reinstall them. If you really want to have a circle, for me, typically a host has a very linear life, so it's not circular. What we do is not that we only like sell Ocarina. We have an engineering department. So we do active development. We develop like more plugins or stabilization of already available features. We have a support department that, well, you as customers can query if you have problems with your Ocarina. We have consultants that know how to use Ocarina. We also offer trainings for Ocarina. And we are also always like very focused on keeping the stability of the software as is, so you can use it for a very long time. Okay, that was a very rough introduction, because I think most of you have a rough idea what Ocarina is. If you need more insight what Ocarina can do, just feel free to contact us to get a personalized demonstration of the features and maybe also an adaptation to your needs. Today we want to talk about how to organize and automate Ocarina itself. So let's get quickly into the demo part. If you have questions until now, let me check. No questions so far. So I think this is a perfect point to continue with the demo. Again, if you have questions, post them and the chat in the QA section of this tool. Okay, you should see on the screen my orcharhino. This is our demo system. In the upper right corner, you can see my name. This is like the dashboard that you see after logging in. And we have several menus. Actually, everything that you can find underneath this menu hosts concerns host provisioning. Everything here found under content is related to content management, patching. Everything you find here in configure is related to configuration management. Applications is something in between. Special topic, application-centric deployment, which is meant to use a playbook, an Ansible playbook, as an input and to deploy multiple hosts that as soon as they are deployed, Ansible is run on. And of course, orcharhino is a software living on a server, but it's of course part of a infrastructure where it's located. And here in the menu point infrastructure, you find settings for some of the surrounding infrastructure pieces. Let's have a quick look at the hosts page. So we have a list of all hosts that we can access through this menu point here. It's loading in the background. So what we can see now is that as soon as it's loaded, we have around 30 hosts here, and they run different operating systems. They also have a name for the operating system. You can also deduce from the name if they are directly attached to the orcharhino, demo orcharhino. So our orcharhino is a demo orcharhino, so if the host is directly attached, the domain is demo, and if it's another network in the DMZ, then the domain is called demo DMZ. So I have the first question here. Someone doesn't see their menu point applications menu. Applications, and the question is if this is an extra feature that they need to activate. Yeah, it's a plugin. You just have to search for application-centric deployment, and then you will find basically it's two plugins, one for the UI. As soon as you install that and restart your orcharhino, you will see the menu, and then there's a second component, a smart proxy plugin, which you have to install on orcharhino and all the orcharhino proxies, so they can act as a control node for that Ansible play. So application-centric deployment, or short ACD, as it is called. Okay, so I hope I could answer that question. If not, feel free to add a follow-up question. So let's get back to the hosts. So they have a very simple naming scheme, and then there is one special host which is called FAM webinar. So FAM stands for the Foreman Ansible Modules. It's a collection of Ansible modules to administer or to automate Foreman and orcharhino. So this is the host that we will have a closer look at later. Okay, so there's a follow-up question for the application-centric deployment. Yeah, so the question is if applications is something like Ansible Tower. It goes in that direction. If you know UIs for Ansible, you know the Tower or AWX, like the open source version of the Tower. On one end, which is very complex, very powerful. On the other end of the spectrum, you have something like Ansible Semaphore, which is a very basic implementation of a UI for Ansible. I would consider orcharhino somewhere in between. So you can do quite a lot of things. You have a lot of power to control on what is run on what host. but there are specific functions in Tower that are not mapped onto our implementation. We should have a different webinar on that topic. So if you're interested in application-centric deployment, I recommend you either have a look at our YouTube channel, or we should also have some posts in our blog, maybe even some links to some presentations. I don't want to go too much into detail because I also want to show other things today, but I hope this is enough for a starting point here. And if you still want to know more, I can try to answer some more questions at the end of the presentation. Okay, so for the moment, let's again focus on this host here. This is an Ubuntu host, which has standard Ubuntu repositories attached. So it is attached to the content view composite Ubuntu 2204, which consists basically of the Ubuntu repositories, Puppet for Ubuntu, and the Ubuntu client software. So nothing special. Let's just switch to terminal quickly. And I'm currently logged in on the orcharhino, and I just quickly log in. So my typical way of logging in, because this is kind of already pre-configured in our setup, so you do a sudo -u, the user Foreman proxy, which has an SSH key under user share Foreman proxy.ssh. And this can directly log into root at then the host name. Okay. Yeah, I have tried this yesterday already, so we have some conflicting SSH fingerprints. Okay, so I'm now logged into this host. I'll just do a quick apt-get update to fill my package cache. And let's say eventually I want to install Docker on my host. Let's see what apt search. Docker shows me nothing. So Docker, if you don't know, it's a containerization software. Actually, it doesn't matter what it is. I just take this as an example because this is not too large to synchronize now quickly. So what I want to do is make the repositories for Docker available on the orcharhino and then be able to install it on this host. And this is what I will do using these Foreman Ansible modules. So let's quickly log out again. So we'll now stay mainly on the console and then sometimes show you what happened in the UI. I have this folder with several playbooks right now and the make file. Why do I have this? So let's start with the most important thing. Set the command vi to vim, because otherwise I don't have much functionality inside. And I have a key binding, which will just start the make file. So I will control through the make file what actually is happening. So let's turn off all those. Playbook 5, I can show you later what is inside. I already did in preparation. This is a playbook to create a host. So we can easily create hosts through Ansible. And the other 4 playbooks are meant for creating content. And playbook 00 we'll call at the end will clean up everything, delete all the things that I created now. So let's start with save this one, start with the play 01, and I think there we'll just tell you some basic things about how I write these playbooks. So as you might have noticed, my Ansible inventory for that case only contains localhost. And I'm running these playbooks on my orcharhino. I could also run it from somewhere else, which might be better. I have one thing which makes it easy to run Ansible playbooks to manage Orcharhino on Orcharhino itself, because somewhere there is the password stored and I just can read it without having to type it in somewhere. Because as usual, I have to authenticate with Orcharhino to perform any tasks. So yeah, as the inventory only contains localhost, I also run my play only on localhost. It's a local connection, and to make it a bit faster, I don't get effects because I don't need them. Eventually, those Foreman Ansible modules are a wrapper around API queries and handling the response in a way that the modules become idempotent, which means I can write a playbook for configuring my Orcharhino, and I can run it an arbitrary number of times without receiving any error. That's, as usual, one of the nice things about Ansible. And here we can use this to configure Orcharhino, which is way ahead of what we can do on the UI. So if I click a button twice on the UI, I have two actions. And it's also, just to mention quickly, more powerful than using Hammer, because also Hammer is just an imperative way of managing Orcharhino. So every command I send twice will result in an error. Not every command, but like all the changing commands will result in an error the second time I run them. Okay, let's get back to the playbook here. As I said, eventually I want to have Docker repositories and I want to use them to install Docker on my host. Nothing of that happens here. This is just really to get you a quick understanding. The first task that we do is we obtain the credentials from the Hammer config. So the Hammer config, after installation, if you haven't removed it, can be found under /root.hammer CLI modules.d/Foreman YAML. I won't open the file now because that contains the password in clear text. What the slurp module does basically is it reads the contents of the file in some variable, which I call Hammer configuration raw. And in the next task, I read the subkey content from this variable to byte64 decode and then parse the contents from the YAML to obtain a structured configuration and store that in the fact Hammer configuration for the moment. And then there might be another solution to that. This is just like what I quickly wrote down. I define the Orcharhino credentials in a way that I can continue using them later. So technically, again, define a fact or several facts, username, password, and server URL. And the username and the password I extract from the Hammer configuration. The server URL I just hard code because this shall run on this host, and since it trusts itself with this host name, this is the easiest way to do so. And what I also do is I define a YAML anchor or an alias. I'm not sure which way this is. So with the ampersand OR credential, this is something that I can access later. So actually in the next step, the next task is a very simple task. I want to query the host information. And here I use this anchor. So this line will be replaced by username, password, and server URL. I will also pass more parameters. And the actual module I call, I always do a fully qualified collection name here. So the foreman.foreman.hostinfo just returns me some information about the host. And while this is now called Alma 8, I'm not interested in Alma 8. I want to know everything about FAM. minus webinar. The data is then stored in the Ansible variable host info, and this debug task just outputs the processor models of this host. Let's just run it. So I have a key binding to directly go into make, as I said. And yeah, basically that's it. You see, we obtain the credentials, we read the content, we define the credentials, and we queried the host information, and then we see this is 2 processor. Well, probably it's 2, I think. So, and well, apparently the hypervisor is running on some server with an Intel Xeon. So far, so good. Let's continue with the more interesting thing. So we go one step further and have a look at the play 02. Start at the beginning. The first 3 tasks are the same as in the last playbook. So we obtain credentials so we can use them later. And then starts the actually interesting part. I call it ensure presence of the product, ensure presence of a sync plan, ensure presence of repository. I don't create a product, I don't create a sync plan, because after the first time they are already there. And since Ansible is supposed to be idempotent, so I can run it twice. And if the second time it already finds the product called demo product, then of course it does not create a new product. Yeah, the same as I said for the repository. And as a last step, I trigger a sync repositories. Sync repository. Sorry, I have to fix this. Yeah. So this is also a rather easy playbook. Let's have one more look. So again, we are all in the context of the Foreman, and then the actual modules are called product, sync plan, repository, and repository sync. So they are, yeah, will have quite talkative names. So I think this reading this playbook should be quite straightforward. Of course, the difficulty always is writing playbooks. We will later have a quick look into how to find information. Let's quickly run this playbook. Before I just go to content products, just to show you that I did not prepare something in advance. There are only well, other products, let's say. They are sorted alphabetically, so the demo product should be between Debian Client and Apple for AL7. Later you will see there's also a repository for Docker, basically. Okay. Product was created. We see the orange confirmation. We changed something. If you run the playbook the second time, this will, of course, be green and only show the OK, because Ansible always determines if an object is already present on orcharhino. Yeah, we have the sync plan, we have the repository, and now the synchronize is running. Let's quickly switch to UI. Let's reload this page. And there we have our demo product. And if I go into it, I have the demo repository, and you see the sync already has gone through. We have 79 packages. Okay, what's the next step for having content for my host? It's hidden in play 03. Let's just have a quick look what's inside there. Again, obtain the credentials. And then we call other modules. We call the content view module to create a content view for the product we just created. If we have this content view, we create a second content view, which is called composite demo. And as you might already assume from the name, this is a composite content view seen here by the flag composite true. And you see the components it contains. So it only has these are other content views. It has all the repositories contained in the content view Ubuntu 22.04, the Ubuntu client, and of course our new content view demo Docker. What we do then is we call the module content view version, which will ensure that we have a published version of the content view demo Docker. So you can also do content view publishing and promotion through the Ansible modules. For the single content view, they will only be promoted to library. And as soon as that happens, we also publish a new version of the composite content view and assign this to the lifecycle development. This will, of course, take a bit of time, so I already started right now. I hope you are so far familiar with content views. So what they basically do is they create a snapshot of this collection of repositories required for Ubuntu, for the basic operating system, and the installation of Docker. So we can also try to follow this in the UI. So we go to content and content views. So I don't go into details about all this thing. We could also manage our lifecycle environment and stuff like this. So it's basically possible to configure an orcharhino from beginning to end only through Ansible modules. The nice thing about this is, if you have any problem, you can easily set up orcharhino again. Or, I mean, technically you could just send your playbook to us and we could, in case of any problem, set up a similar instance in our own data center to try to reproduce your problems. So what do we have here? If I scroll a bit down, there is the content view demo Docker. And we also have a composite demo here. You just click on this one, and as you see, there is a version 1.0 currently published to library with 19,000 web packages. And it's possible it's currently promoting this also to test to development. So by the way, our host, the FAM webinar host, is attached to the lifecycle testing. So we also need to promote our content view to testing eventually. Let's see. Yeah, exactly. So it's now also promoted to development. So development hosts could be attached to this content view, but as I said, our host belongs to testing. So let's also have a quick look how to do this. If you want to have a closer look at the playbooks again, type this as a question and I will at the end also show you again what it's inside there. So obviously the next playbook is the playbook number 4. And this does not do much. Again, it calls the module Foreman content view version. it targets the content view composite demo, and then this key here, current lifecycle environment, takes basically the version of this content view which is currently promoted to development and then promoted also to testing, which is quite helpful if you, well, have like a semi-manual, semi-automatic way of promoting your content views, because this is like a very tricky part. You could fully automate this, like have a large playbook where you also have like automatic tests, but as soon as some tests fail, you have to do something manual, of course. Okay, so this does nothing more than just promote the content view we just saw to testing. So I just run it, and while it's running, we look at a question. Question is it already possible to automatically create playbooks for an existing orcharhino installation, which makes use of the settings made in the UI? So you basically want to extract the settings and create a playbook out of this. I mean, yes, technically it is possible. I can think of, well, collecting some queries and then condense them into some kind of playbook. But it hasn't been done so far. So one problem is that, at least in the beginning, now they are a bit more mature, the extraction of information is not the strong side of these Foreman Ansible modules. They are more intended for putting information into orcharhino. So if you want to extract, there is like a meta module which is called resource info, but then Ansible itself is not that strong on or it's quite clumsy to combine these different types of information. I would rather go directly through the API in that scenario. And like the overall answer is there is no ready-made tool for extracting all the information, but technically, if you know what to collect, this could be written, of course. I hope that answers the question. Otherwise, just feel free to send a follow-up question. Okay, in the meantime, I go back to the UI. I just reload this page and we'll see that this is also promoted to testing. So now we come to a point where we have a content that can be attached to our host. Unfortunately, there is no module to manage the subscriptions of hosts, because that's what we technically need to do now. We need to make sure that the host is attached to this new content view and that it also obtains the subscription for the new product. We do this in the UI. So this seems kind of a pity that it's not possible to perform this action through the Ansible modules. But I think these are rather unique tasks that you don't do regularly, like reattaching or managing subscriptions. So these are not the highest priority. If you think that this or that Foreman Ansible module is missing, or you can think of tasks that might be useful having them in Foreman Ansible modules, well, you can always open the feature request with us, or of course also ask the community for that purpose. Okay, so let's take the host that we have here. I have to check it, and then we go to the select action. Let's go to the subscriptions. No, this is not what I wanted to do. You first need to be attached to the right content view. Sorry. Okay. So there are some questions in the chat also. Like that. Basically, if you want to have information, also one question is where to get information about Foreman Ansible modules. Of course, the community board by Foreman is a good address, so community.foreman.org, which is a discourse for the Foreman community. And they have a category for Foreman Ansible modules. The documentation of the Foreman Ansible modules itself. Let's just quickly check if we have the Foreman Ansible. So you have in the Foreman docs. This is basically the docs of the Foreman Ansible modules. So we currently are shipping version 3.10. So we always ship one specific version with our Orcharhino, so to make sure they are compatible. So just search for the Foreman Ansible modules. This will for sure lead you there. And then the main page that you need to see, it's already clicked here, the plugin index, which is a list of all the modules that you have inside the Foreman Ansible modules. And you will find the ones we already used, but a lot more of them. So the content view modules we got the content view version, but you see already you can control domains, you can contain hosts, and typically if it's present, you always have the same module with the suffix _info to obtain information, to extract information from Orcharhino. So this is basically the best thing. The other thing I also use quite often is the inline help Ansible doc, the foreman.say host. This will directly deduce or extract the online documentation from the installed version of your collection. So you see all the keys that you can set. And typically you have at the end of these documentation, it's basically the same you can also see in the browser. At the end, you have a lot of examples that can help you understand how to use these modules. Okay. So feel free to ask follow-up questions if you want to know more here at this point. In the meantime, so I changed the content view of this host to composite demo, so it will now receive the packages from the newly created content view. And now I also want to make sure it can obtain the Docker package. So I check this, go to select action, a drop-down menu, and say manage subscriptions. This now loads all the available subscriptions. And I need to subscribe to a product. The name of the product was demo something. So just search for demo, check this one product. Don't forget to click the add selected, because this is something I typically do. And now in the database of Orcharhino, there is a new information that this host is now allowed to obtain packages from these repositories in these products. So what I have to do now is to log in to that host again. I still have the clash in the known hosts. Okay. So my method of the day changed because like the first one was set using Ansible and now salt ran. So I now see the new, which kind of confused me for a moment. Okay, subscription manager refresh. Basically fetches the subscription information from Orcharhino again. apt-get update to refresh the package information. And you see here we have the demo product demo repository appearing. And as soon as this is done, we do a quick search for Docker. Okay, and if I say apt show Docker CE, somewhere here I can see that the URL shows points to the demo repository. So I technically created all the content on the orcharhino, and then, well, this was a kind of a manual step. Okay, so I hope this already gave you some insight. Then I have one more question, which is a slightly different topic. If it's possible to add a network interface or a hard disk to an already existing virtual machine, which has been provisioned by orcharhino using Ansible. Yeah. So it's directly related to this one. Can just try. Because I won't show this in detail now. I have never tested it so far, but it is possible. Go back to this. Well, let's have a look at the browser thing. So I go to the plugin index and go to the host module. And you see, if you scroll a bit down, that you can define compute attributes here. And you can also define interface attributes. So compute attributes is everything about CPU, memory, and storage. And the interface attributes is all about the network interfaces. So you can technically use those keys to add more of those entities to your virtual machine. And then that depends on your hypervisor. It's not supported for all hypervisors and not for all kinds of interface or devices in general. But when it works in the UI, and I think for VMware it currently works, for Proxmox I'm not sure. And it also depends, of course, if it's a hot pluggable interface device or not. So you might need to restart the host to see the new disk. For Proxmox, this is I'm not quite sure, but this is with most devices this is the case. So IDE devices need to be require reboot. SCSI devices can be hot pluggable, but this depends also on the configuration. But in general, the interaction of orcharhino to your hypervisor can do such things, and then it's also possible to trigger this through Ansible, of course. I hope that answered the question. And since quite late, I would also do the last task now, which is cleaning up. Basically just call make clean, and while this is running and while I'm fixing all the issues there, are there more questions? So make clean basically does the things I did before, just in the reverse order. Like we have a lot of Ansible modules, and then you just put state absent inside. The first one is the composite content view. If this is deleted, then the content view can be deleted. If this is deleted, then we can also delete the repository, the sync plan, and the product. But never delete a content view that is also already is still used by some hosts. So this is what the error message here tells us. Can I remove composite demo from environment testing due to associated hosts from webinar demo.ethics.de. Okay, so that was in addition to the last question. Yeah, so with vCenter, I think it should be possible to change devices also through Ansible. So back here to my cleanup task. Now I could just delete the host through Ansible, just have the same task that I create before, just for creating the host and just with adding state absent. There's one more thing I want to mention here, which is not directly related to Ansible, but is something that we sometimes need to fill the gaps. Not every scenario can be done with the Foreman Ansible module. Sometimes you need to query the API directly. Just to give you a quick hint how this works. On your orcharhino, you have a subpath API doc, which shows you basically all the API endpoints. So I'm somewhere in the middle. All the resources that you can manage directly through the API. And there is so the first word always is the, how to say, the request type. So it's a REST API. And if I send a delete request to the endpoint API hosts, the idea, which can be either the numerical ID or the host name. This is not here, this delete a host. And basically that's what we have to send. We can click on this thing. I will see that this will also have the location ID, the organization ID. But these are all optional. So typically this should, let's see if this already works. So how will I do this? I can just, use some API requesting tool, or I can also write this as an Ansible module. And the nice thing is that I can use the same logic I had used before, using slurp to query the credentials from the Foreman YAML, from the Hammer configuration, and then use the Ansible built-in URI module, query the server URL, API hosts. Then I want to have basic authentication, use the username and password that I did use from the Hammer configuration. And then, of course, I have to fill in all the values that I need to fulfill this post, the delete query. This is a bit fiddly, so I don't finish this right now. I just delete my host manually, or I delete it. And you just have to trust me that this is equivalent to doing an API query. And of course, if you have the API query within orcharhino, you can deduce from the result to your request if it changed something, what it changed. So typically there's a response. If the host was not there, if I try to delete it, it will send a 404, so I can deduce from the result if my query was successful and if something similar had already been done. Host is deleted. Let's call the make clean again, and in the meantime I'll quickly scan through the chat if there is something else I haven't answered yet. Yeah. There's one question. I already mentioned this. They are not feature complete, of course, absolutely not. And they are quite far behind Hammer. That's quite obvious to everyone who worked with them. You always can write feature requests. Typically, if a lot of our users use a certain functionality or are missing it from the Foreman Ansible modules, we try to incorporate those. So a lot of the Foreman Ansible modules were developed by us. And if you go through the different versions, there is some development. It's not super fast. But like in general, yeah, you can expect that at some point there is a better feature set. Okay. Then there's a question if you can have the example playbooks. I think there's not much secrets about. I'm not sure how you can get them, but if you are in contact with any of our consultants, just feel free to ask them. And yeah, maybe we should write some new blog post about that topic in the near future. I hope that would help. Okay, so then the last question, because then I think we need to finish. Somebody got here late. Will this webinar be available as a recording? Yes, this webinar is recorded and it will be available, I think, on YouTube at a later point. Either you just regularly check our YouTube channel, or you can also get directly in contact with our sales marketing department. They will have better information when and where this will be available. Okay. So stay in contact with us. Always, I mean, if you have questions, just send them to us. We do our best to answer your questions. Playbook ran through, so everything I just showed you is gone now, which makes my colleagues very happy because there's always a lot of rubbish on our demo system, which no one really cleans up. So I'm very proud that I have a good playbook written here. And of course, I thank you for your patience, for your time here, and I hope you enjoy orcharhino. And if you have not been a customer so far, so I hope you will become one soon. Thank you.